Hey everybody, want to welcome you to our newest segment of Ask Norm. And we're going to have some special guests that come in for this from time to time. And one of our favorite guitar players and musicians, overall musician, not just guitar player, is Taylor Goldsmith from the group Dawes. And if you've seen the Basement tapes, you'll understand. I mean, Taylor's a great musician, more than just a guitar player, and he's a great guitar player. And our buddy Blake Mills plays with you guys from time to time.
Yeah. He produced our new record, in fact. It's funny you say that about musician. That's what he said to me once. He meant it as a compliment, and I took it as a compliment. But he's like, you play guitar like a musician, not like a guitar player. And,
Wow.
and there is a difference.
Absolutely.
That's
And
what
I play keyboard too.
Coming from him, that's a bit high praise indeed. Yeah.
I'm mainly a Hammond organ player. I used to be,
Right.
but I heard you playing keyboards too, and you played very
Yeah.
tasteful. And
Started on keyboards because when Blake and I were in a band together, obviously there's no reason why anyone else should be playing a guitar.
Yeah.
So I would play the
It was
rhythm
pretty
guitar, and then I'd play keys. And then once we stopped being in a band, once Simon Dawes was over and it became Dawes, that was the first time I ever even tried to take a solo, because until then, like I said, being in a band with him, I never needed to, so I didn't know how to play lead guitar at all. But obviously everything I did learn was from him.
Yeah, well, that's a great
him
person
kind
to
of
learn
point me in
from.
what
Yeah.
directions to go.
Well, Blake Mills, just to talk about Blake for a second, is one of the most astounding guitar
Yeah.
players I've ever heard in my entire life, and an astounding musician.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard of him, you will.
Yeah. And now he's an astounding
He's
producer.
producing Alabama Shakes,
Yeah.
right? Who
Yeah.
you guys are out on tour with?
Yeah,
right now,
we're actually gonna leave for a tour with them in a few days. Actually, we're gonna go play a couple weeks with them. But
Wow.
yeah, he produced their incredible most recent record, and then he just worked with us, and he's got a lot more production gigs coming through the pipeline. So
Wow.
it's such an incredible platform for which he can really show all the things that he can do as a musician, because with him, it does go way beyond just being a good guitar player. He's a master of finding incredible sounds and incredible tones.
And Americana, I mean, that's part of that, finding the tones, but he just makes everything sound authentic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also, he has when authentic to him means more like what's something that no one's ever heard before. What's something that where we can really make someone like lean in and say, how do they do that?
Wow. Yeah.
Like every time that I would say something like, oh, let's do it like this because it reminds me of, Cream or Michael Jackson or whatever what my example was, he would always kind of, his line of thinking was always, let's do exactly the opposite because we want to make sure that no one
It's
ever
original.
says this sounds like this.
But, the Americana thing sort of takes you in time someplace. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that my buddy Tony Berg, who was a producer that produced some of Blake's stuff,
Yeah.
I remember he was telling me that they had to have some Django thing for some TV show
Yeah.
or something, and all Blake had was an ES330, which is not the Django guitar.
Yeah.
Ideally,
But I heard what he did with the 330 and a little amp,
Yeah.
and he made it sound like a Django thing. I mean, Blake
Yeah.
is like crazy cool.
Yeah.
So, not to scratch your back, but Taylor, my buddy over here, he's crazy cool too. And the band Dawes is outstanding. And,
all
it's
fantastic musicians, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
young
thanks.
guys who can really play and understand music.
yeah.
So we got a few questions
Excellent
from
stuff.
you all.
Well, you know what? While we're talking to Taylor, we get a lot of questions about benefit. Why people use vintage instruments, and you're a great proponent of that. You like stuff that's really vibey and cool
Yeah.
and full of tone. You're all about the tone and the sound and the.
Yeah.
So what led you to the vintage instrument thing? Was it mainly the sound, or?
It was, I feel like with a lot of collectors that I meet, there is this element of getting the right model, the right year, because of more the collecting side of things,
Yeah.
which I really respect, and I can really, I want to listen to those guys talk. But for me, it's always been, I want to pick it up and hear it, or I want to plug it in and hear it, and I don't have that knowledge of like what year and why. For me, it is a sound. It is a
If
feel.
it sounds great.
Yeah,
then
and I actually got a 1959 345 from you guys not that long ago.
It's a beaut,
and
yeah.
and those old PAF pickups,
Sound pretty
it's night
good,
and
huh?
day. I mean, you plug those in and to any amp, and it's going to make such a difference. And that goes for the amps too. Once you find the right thing And a lot of the time I wish I had the knowledge you guys did have with that stuff of like, because I've heard all the terminology like, oh well, you want this AC30 because of it's hand wired, blah blah blah, and I don't particularly know all the lingo, but I know that when I plug into an early AC35 or AC30, I'm blown away.
Yeah.
Well, you come at it as a musician, you just want to hear the functionality of the thing and all that. So, Taylor, do me a favor. I mean, you're sitting with a cool acoustic over here. This is a D18. What year do you remember?
This is a 66.
66 D18, nice guitar. Can you play a little bit for us? Just
Yeah. Yeah, this guitar I actually got here as well several years ago, and I've played this on this was the main acoustic guitar on our last record, All Your Favorite Bands. There wasn't that much acoustic guitar on it. We did most of it live, and I was playing the solos and all the electric guitar, which was my telly. And then acoustic when it was necessary was an overdub, and Dave Rawlings produced it. So when he played acoustic, he played that old Epiphone of his, that legendary model. Yeah. So you'll hear that in there, and then there's a few songs where there's this. We also had he owns somehow the Nashville tuned hummingbird that was used on Blonde on Blonde. So like whenever we wanted like a 12-string sound, it was like this, and then that Nashville.
And how did the Dylan connection with the Basement Tapes thing happen?
That happened for me. My involvement was by the grace of Marcus Mumford, because T-Bone Burnett, who kind of spearheaded the whole thing and produced it, he wasn't aware of me, and nor would I have expected him to be. And so he, when he was coming up with the idea for the whole project, and he reached out to Marcus put in a word for me and was like, let's do this, and you should look into my buddy Taylor. He'd be good for this. So
well, he's buddies with Tony Berg too.
Yeah.
So Tony is his next door neighbor.
Yeah. I've been to Tony's a bunch. I've never seen exactly where on that street T1 lives, but yeah, that's how I got involved. It was obviously one of the most incredible experiences of my life. We actually saw. We were just at Newport Folk Festival, and Elvis was playing. So Dawes got up and we backed up Elvis and we played.
That's great.
We played Every Day I Write the Book and Brilliant Mistake and Peace, Love, and Understanding. So that was so fun. We actually didn't end up.
That's pretty cool.
We rehearsed some Basement Tape stuff, but we ended up not even playing any.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That was great. There was such an outpouring of fantastic music. I mean, it was so interesting to watch everyone's different takes on the same thing. That was a mind-blowing experience. Never done anything like that.
So let's get to some of these questions here, because we don't want the people who write in to get pissed off. So we're gonna answer a few here.
Nah, it's all good stuff. All right. Well, this is directed at you. So Peter M says, who would you rather have in your store? Someone that can't afford a vintage instrument but plays daily, or someone who has the money but doesn't play, just an investor or collector?
That's a tough question. You want an honest answer? I mean, my family would prefer the guy who's ready to buy something. Right. But I mean, we always figure that, if somebody comes in and they can play and they have an appreciation for the stuff, that's a future customer, so we treat them right. But if you want an honest answer, for today, as long as we want to eat on a regular basis, we do like when people actually buy stuff. Yeah. But we do a lot of stuff on the come, hoping that some people come in.
And we do love to hear all these fantastic musicians. I mean, we get spoiled in here. There's some just people that walk through the door can really blow you away sometimes.
And you guys have always been, way before we all knew each other, I would come in here and you guys would let me play all the nice stuff. You guys are really cool to players.
Yeah, well, that's the way you get an appreciation for what sounds good. You know, just what you were talking about.
We were planting a seed. So.
Yeah. All right, Norm, let's, Daniel Basantes wants to know, Let's say you were to open a guitar store in New York City. Would your guitar selection differ from your current store? If so, why?
I don't think it would differ. I mean, you know, for years I've been like putting away guitars, and I have a warehouse filled with guitars, and we have a zillion guitars in here, and we have a lot of stuff that's not even showing in the store here. So, you know, we could easily open more stores. The only problem is I want to be sure that I don't hire somebody to come in there and they destroy the reputation of what we have
Right.
and all that. And I think that we have enough guitars that we could probably open 3 or 4 more stores with just what we have.
Yeah.
But, you know, at this point in my life, you know, I'd rather do it the way we're doing it, keep it simple and all that. You know, we've got
Keep
our
it all
buddies that come
in-house.
in. It's
Yeah.
always good to see our friends, you know.
Yeah.
Just turning somebody loose with our name never really appealed to me.
Yeah, it's nice to have where you have control, because you're here every day and you have control of it, and sort of keeps it a cottage industry. All right, Nolan Jenkins wants to know, how did you get started in the industry, and what was the first guitar that got you into collecting / selling?
Well, you know, the first really good guitar that I had was an L5 blonde cutaway, and there's a story in the book about it, in my new book, where this lady was moving to Japan with her family, and her husband said, get rid of everything. And I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. This was like maybe 1966 or 67 in Miami. And the lady had this ad, and it said, you know, stove, refrigerator, guitar, and there was a phone number. So I called up, and she said, well, you know, I have a guitar. We want $25 for it. I said, well, what's the name on it? She goes, it says Gibson. And I said, well, how many strings does it have? She said, let's see, 2, 4, 6 strings. So I said, I'll tell you what,
Stove
sight
fridge
unseen,
guitar.
I'll go over there and I'll give you $20 for it. I don't care what it is. I'll buy it. It's a Gibson, whatever. And I didn't know anything about guitars at this time. So I go over to her house, and I can see they're moving, and there's a beautiful brown case leaning against the wall. And I'm going, well, this can't possibly be it. You know, I mean, she's asking 25, and I'm offering her 20, and she's going to take it. But it was, and it was a blonde cutaway L5. And there's a lot more to this story, but that kind of sucked me in, because when I saw the guitar, it was art to me, and I didn't even know what I was looking at.
Yeah, that's cool.
Amazing. What year was that? Would that have
It
been?
was a Premier, so it was a late 30s, one of the very first cutaway L5s.
Wow.
It was just a complete luck out, and that kind of got the fuel going to get me into this business.
She didn't make you buy the stove and the refrigerator.
No,
so-
but I probably could have bought the whole house for what the
Got the whole
guitar was
thing.
worth, even at that time. But I didn't know. I mean, I really was blind, and I knew I was getting a good deal, but I didn't know how good a deal.
Right. I'm going to skip ahead a couple, because
Okay.
we got Taylor here and he can weigh in on this. Anthony Calderon wants to know, due to the expense of Les Paul vintage reissues that are being made by Gibson in the custom shop, what price point should you stop looking at those and start looking for an actual vintage Les Paul? In other words, buying a new reissue versus buying the real thing,
Right.
which at this point isn't going to cost you that much more. So he just wants to know what people think about that.
Well, how much are the reissues? I'm not even.
The reissues, you know, anywhere from maybe $3,500 to $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, depending on what it is, maybe a little bit more. And a real one is the price of a house in many cities.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so I mean, you know, my buddy Joe Bonamassa has like 9 or 10 of them now, and they're very expensive guitars. They're fantastic.
He has the bursts, like
The bursts, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the one thing about the Les Pauls is that the reissues are so much dramatically under the price of a real one that it makes a lot of sense to buy one.
Yeah.
There are certain guitars that they do reissues where a reissue is every much the price of a real one. Why would you do that? Why would you buy a reproduction of something that you could buy a real one at the same price or
Yeah.
close to it? So when the price kind of makes sense, I think it.
But
Right.
what about you know, bursts aside? What about a reissue of like a 58 or 59 versus say a 70s Les Paul or a, you know,
you
a
know,
custom or a deluxe or something.
You know, to be honest with you,
Which are
the
affordable.
70s and 80s are nice guitars, and they sound good. Some of them weigh a ton. The sound of that guitar has a very distinct sound because of the weight and stuff like that.
Right.
Not my favorite era. I like actually a lot of the reissue stuff better,
A bit better.
than that. But there are ones that just, you know, have that sound that, you know, are well worth the money, and you're not paying an arm and a leg, and you're getting something that's really functional and all that.
Right. Cool.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of Joe Bonamassa, you know, we are going to bring in some of our favorite guests, like Taylor over here, and Joe has agreed to come in. I think he's going to come in on our next Ask Norm, and we're going to talk to him about some guitars.
Sweet.
Yeah. So, looking forward to that. All right, you want to do one more?
Sure.
Okay. You know what? This one's kind of a dodgy question. Ian Verritt wants to know, Norm, I've asked before, you have so many beautiful guitars, amps, etc. You live in an area that has earthquakes. What happens when a large quake strikes? I know we were around for Northridge, so...
Yes, and there are pictures. Actually, there's a chapter in my new book about it, and you could look and see it's not a pretty thing and scares the hell out of us, and it always looms large above our head, you know, that, you know...
I came to
something like
see
that
you
can
after
happen.
the Northridge quake
Yeah.
because I lost a couple of guitars and motorbikes and stuff, but his store was just... There was a pile of rubbles. There was necks sticking out. It was...
But you know what? Strangely enough, guitars are fairly durable unless something really dramatically
Yeah.
hits it. And what's funny is one side of our store was very damaged, and the other side of our store, we were on a corner, was almost
It was fine, yeah.
perfect.
Right.
So we dodged the bullet, and you know it's always there. So you know, you live in LA, Taylor.
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
think, buddy?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's not as, it's funny when you travel around and people hear these things about LA and they assume like, oh, your whole state's on fire right now. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, it is bad, but it's not as bad as it seems on the news. And,
Yeah.
and fires here are tornadoes or blizzards or hurricanes
Hurricanes,
somewhere
yeah.
else.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it is scary, but it's also, I don't think there's an area in which you could open a place like this where you don't have that, a version of that fear in one form or
There's
another.
something.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, if it was, I mean, God bless the folk in Nashville that had all the floods.
yeah,
through
that
there,
was terrible.
Which
You
is
know,
a
lot of
natural
people-
disaster.
That really, a
Oh
lot
my
of people
God.
really lost a lot of instruments. in
Yeah.
that.
There's a lot of guitars that will never be, I mean, there's a lot of vintage stuff went missing. And
So Taylor, do me a
Very
favor.
sad.
Just on the way out here, we have this 1945 018.
You want me to hold it?
And I know you were playing that a little bit before.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
yeah, beautiful.
Taylor, I can't thank you enough, buddy.
Yeah.
It's always great to have you in here, and give my best to my buddy Blake and
Will
the
do.
rest of the guys from Dawes. And if you guys haven't seen Dawes, you guys are missing
Go
one
see
of the
it.
best young groups there is anywhere. Musically fantastic, and most of them are multi-instrumentalists, play a lot of instruments. So Dawes, check it out. Basement Tapes, check it out. Taylor Goldsmith, Nick Dias, and then me.
See you soon.